This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache and you don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information. Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About AI. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. Now, artificial intelligence is the most powerful and the most quickly adopted technology in human history. If this pace continues, what will be left that's uniquely human? It's a question keeping a lot of people up at night as AI tools spread all across the world. We're sort of not worried so much about whether AI can do the job. I feel like that's evolved in most conversations. It's sort of the question now is what happens when it can do the job? Vivek Mehrotra has spent 27 years building AI systems, most recently establishing the digital division at Smiths Detection. He's written a fascinating book called The Orchestration Age that argues that we're focusing on the wrong part of the picture. It's not whether AI will take our jobs, it's how we'll learn to orchestrate these tools like a conductor leads an orchestra. This, I think, is where the conversation gets really interesting. Vivek, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Felix.
So I wonder if you could just start by telling us, why did you decide to write a book and why this book?
Well, that's the question which was looming in my mind as well. So I wrote this book because I felt the conversation on AI is kind of stuck between two extremes. Either AI will save everything or AI is going to destroy everything. There was very little in between. And if I just tell you my foray into the AI before I go further onto this, is that I first studied AI more structurally and methodically back in 2012 when I took a structured course with then professor at Stanford Universities, Professor Andrew Ng and Peter Norvig. And that gave me a technical ground of and hands-on experience of what AI is. When 2011, 2012, when ChatGPT started to come in, the large language model came in, I started going deeper into those areas. And that's when I felt that we are missing something that is, we're not talking more about human aspect of AI. And what I felt is if we were missing, what we are not missing is how to of the AI, and that's what I say in this book, that this is not a how-to manual of the AI, but we were missing a way to think about what it means to be a human when intelligence suddenly become abundant and cheap. And that's the idea which came up to me in terms of orchestration, that instead of seeing AI as a single super brain, I see it as an orchestra of powerful instruments. And then the interesting question here, it isn't how smart the violin is in the orchestra. The question is, who is the conductor? What music we are playing and why? And if we think that metaphor in case of AI, my book is the attempt to give people a language and a mental model so that they can orchestrate the AI in their own lives rather than feeling like they're stuck with AI or AI is moving at a very fast pace and I don't know what's going to happen to my job, etc.
So it's really, really interesting, and in a lot of ways, I'd say quite ahead of the conversation that we're having at the moment. Because am I right in thinking it's almost a question of how we think about ourselves? It feels like quite a personal challenge that you're dealing with there.
No, you're right, absolutely. And that's exactly what I talk in this book. I make a very simple distinction between intelligence and consciousness. So intelligence is about solving problems, spotting patterns and things like that, right? Consciousness is about being aware, caring and taking responsibility. And that's an ability what human has at the moment, which at the moment no AI has. And AI is extremely good at intelligence. It can read more document. We know that ChatGPT and the tools like that, they can summarize it, generate text, spot pattern in data and all that thing. But at the moment, I felt that it doesn't have a consciousness. It doesn't feel anything. It doesn't understand what's at the stake. It doesn't care if an outcome is kind, cruel, safe, or disastrous. So when people say, will AI replace human? My response is it might replace certain tasks, especially those they are like purely pattern recognition type of task, or in some cases maybe writing basic code and all that thing. But it can't replace your role as conscious decision maker.
I mean, you and I are very aligned on that. I think one of the really interesting sort of hallmarks or defining features of I guess the sort of conversational element of the LLMs, like how we interact with them, is they're very good at mimicking consciousness. I I feel. What do you think? Where do you think AI gets it right? Where are the dangers in that?
So if you look at it, the way the LLMs were trained, they were trained on the data which was scrapped from the internet, all the PDF documents, literature, and everything, right? That's where the human knowledge was and human has written. So when you interact with LLM, you feel like they are talking to you as someone is sitting on the other side, which in most cases it is true. But I think where the danger is, and where we need to understand that how we are using the LLM part of the AI. And by the way, when I say AI, it is a language based AI. The language started coming in the human evolution much later than the visual and the hearing sense were there, right? So human traditionally learned by seeing and by hearing first, and maybe in the last 5,000 years of the human evolution, the language started coming in. So it's not going to give you everything like mimic the brain, the way human brain developed. And if you look at the aspect of the brain, right? I mean, we have a limbic system which was there ever since human evolved. Uh, millions of years, but the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, started evolving quite late, which is responsible for reasoning, and that's what is mostly sitting in the language model of the AI. If you look at it, the limbic system, the consciousness, the emotions are kind of missing. We do see that, it's kind of mimicking. The danger is that if we are not using it right, it can really hallucinate and give you what it thinks is right, not what you think is right. And that's the whole argument which I make in my book, that we as a human have to be a guardrail of what we are asking to AI to do.
That is really fascinating. Um, I've never heard it put that way before. That the because AI has been trained on language, that's actually quite a limited. It is actually, you're so right. So a limited part of the brain and a limited part of human history that it's been trained on. So it's almost sort of de facto going to be limited when compared to those other elements of the brain. Fascinating. So let's take it on the next logical step. Why is consciousness and the conscience, why is that important when it comes to defining the human role in this world of abundant intelligence?
So humans do have an ability to connect with what they are doing, beyond just the reasoning aspect of what they are doing. We as a human work on the trust model. I mean, of course, it took a lot of time for humans to develop trust amongst themselves in the evolution theory, if you look at it. But then there is an aspect of what we do every day in daily life. We reason ourselves as to why we are doing, how is it going to affect us, particularly if you look at our personal life and even our professional life. When particularly me, when I work in a safety critical environment. I want to make sure that what I am doing makes sense to the people, because it kind of reflects in the life of the people. So this question humans keep asking, we in the personal life also keep asking the same question: why are we doing what we are doing, and what effect it is going to have? This is missing at the moment in the large language model. Yes, you can train the language model to become it like that, but it's still far, in my opinion. And that's why the consciousness and the human aspects of using the AI comes in, that when we use AI, if we are keep on asking why are we doing it, are we doing it within the safety and ethical guardrails of doing it, then it makes more meaningful sense in the right use of AI rather than using it, just giving everything to say ChatGPT or Gemini or language models or the frontier AI model, I would say that, and then asking them to do everything. You can't get the things done in that way. So the role of human with the consciousness keeps coming at every incremental stage when you use that.
Yeah, the I've seen it in my own use of AI. The need to invest time upfront in aligning and sort of, what is it, tweaking the models to be effective in the context that you want it to operate in. I mean, it's becomes 10, the outputs become 10 times more usable and more powerful.
Absolutely.
And so, and you have to provide that, yeah, that sort of why to the model, because it's
Exactly. I mean, if you look at it, give one big prompt to these language models and ask them to do everything in one prompt rather than, you break down in the smaller prompt. And then every time you ask AI to do with your own consciousness, your own reasoning, you will get much better output and outcome rather than, just getting everything done in one way. And when you are breaking these prompts, you are bringing in the human side of the story into the AI.
I'd like to move into, I guess, the core part of the book, which is this concept of a conductor, or the orchestration that you need to do. How can we as individuals become adept at this orchestration?
So if you look at the way I structured the book, I do talk about intelligence versus consciousness, but then I move on to talking about, in my own sense, few orchestration patterns, something similar to what an conductor would do it in the orchestra. So, and I try to create a metaphor of and using a lot of terms in philosophical tone from orchestra. That how you can use AI and conduct AI, multiple AI tools in a different way. I talk about fugue, I talk about canon, I talk about symphony, jazz and ensemble, and choral. So we can work in my way, the way I have described in the book, that we can work AI with AI in 5 ways over time, which is fugue pattern, which means that you start to use multiple different AI tools, not just the language model, the vision model, the image model, and many other model based on the task what you think you are doing. And you can iteratively start to give this to different AI tools, like the instruments in the orchestra, and then you can get the output of those AI tool, and you being a human then collate all those output and see whether it makes meaningful sense to you or not. I do talk about canon, where you can run your inputs in various tools in parallel, like the canon in orchestra is, and then you can combine all those output and use human sense to understand that it is making meaningful sense to you or not. Symphony, which is in hierarchy, when you have a symphony in orchestra, so you start with one top level task and then start to break down into multiple different other levels of tasks, and then combine the output of all those things and see whether it makes meaningful sense. Jazz and ensemble is something where you improvise live in the music. You can do the same thing by using multiple tools of AI for your input and see whether it's making meaningful sense to you or not. So there are different ways in the book which I talk about how you can use AI, but be there all the time to understand whether it is making sense to you or.
Yeah, that's something that really came through. Is there a right time to be fugue versus jazz versus canon? Is there a right task?
And that is where I go into the book and talk about the topology of machine intelligence. So if you draw the quadrant of intelligence, which is where on the x-axis, if you put it something like you know narrow task versus broad task, and on y-axis if you put the system capability, deterministic versus probabilistic, then you as a human needs to decide the task which you are asking AI to do sits in which quadrant. Is it narrow and deterministic versus it is broad and probabilistic and all? And depending on that, you start to use the different patterns, fugue versus canon versus symphony and others, right? That's the role of human. That's the role of orchestrator. That's the role of conductor in the orchestra. And that's what you need to play when you're using multiple different AI rather than just simply using AI and then getting the job done for yourself.
Vivek, I wonder if you could give, so it's all making sense at a conceptual level. I wonder if you could bring it to life with an example. You know, if you're going to do something that most people will understand. So let's not go into complex, like, X-ray recognition stuff. But
Absolutely, we won't make it too technical, but let me give you an example what I did it in my use of AI. So, well, I'm not a material scientist or I'm not a chemical engineer. All my life, I had been computer literate. But one of the project where I used multiple different ways and orchestrated multiple different AIs was scrap metal handling in steel manufacturing. So the idea was to find out different elemental compositions of the scrap metal when you manufacture the steel. And how I used AI or how I orchestrated it is that first I used AI as a teacher. Explain this to me like a beginner. Explain this to me like an engineer. What are the main methods people use today in understanding? That gave me the terminology understanding of the metallurgy aspect of the materials and other. Me completely being not a material scientist at all. Then I used AI to use it as more of a research assistant. 600 pages of document, several papers, summarize it, tell me what it means to use X-ray versus other sensors in analyzing this scrap metal. So that helped me. And then I used AI as an idea partner, that you help me to understand if I do these things in scrap metal and understanding, what does is my idea good enough? Does it sound like that? So I used different AI and then moved on to something what Google has done as Google DeepMind Gnome project, which discovered materials like 380,000 materials in very short time, which human history took only 28,000 materials to be find out. So they have opened the source code, and I, being hands-on, I went on to that and try understanding how they are doing, and then try analyzing it in my project. So a real role of orchestrator is something which I played in my real life to use different AIs at different time and asking the right questions to the AI to understand whether what I am doing is right or not. And the result was that at least I was able to come up with the right idea in terms of how we can use scrap metal characterization in steel manufacturing.
so to pull it into a different, because when you were talking, you were using it. I mean, I love that. But when you were talking, you were using this tool as a teacher, using this tool as a researcher. I suppose the Google DeepMind is probably more like using this tool. It's basically like a library, right? I think it all comes together to sort of think about being able to sit back and say, completely blue sky, if I were to do this project with unlimited resources in the old world, how would I be going about it? And you go to a I don't know, if you're based in the UK, Oxford University metallurgy professor, and say, hey, look, I'll pay you £100,000 to sit down and explain this to me like a child. Okay, now explain it to me like an adult. You then have a team of researchers doing all the rest of it. And I think what's really exciting about AI, if you can get that knowledge of what tool does what tool is useful for what piece, you
Mhm.
really can access a level of resource that you weren't that would have been previously, I mean, maybe only available to companies like Google before. So it's really exciting. It does beg the question, though. There are so many tools. I mean, there's literally, I sometimes feel like there's 100 AI tools for every single task that could be done. how do we know what tool is good at what task?
So the more you are into it, the more you will learn incrementally. See, AI is being developed at such a fast pace that everyone is coming up with some or other tool. Or we know that there are certain standard tools in the market, but when you start to you start simple, you start using the most available tool for you to be able to just learn and develop the knowledge in the area which where you want to either research or you want to work. And then you will use the same AI to ask what next I can do, and it'll tell you the next steps, that okay, this is where you can go and do the next. You don't really need to be a hands-on coder at the moment to kind of write the code. You can do a very quick prototype using these AI tools, and it will tell you the next step as to okay, do this and do that. So is it going to take the job of coder away? Perhaps not, but what I'm trying to make here is that you as a human, if you start very simple from one AI and then ask it to move it to your, what is the next step, where should I go from here onwards, ask the right question, it will find you the complete roadmap of where you should land.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And of course, sort of underpinning what you were saying just then, you can just ask your AI what the best tool is for each task.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are two ways. Either you do a lot of research, go to the internet, find out, be at a pace of, every tool which is coming up, or use AI to find out where do I go next.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because so much of this just comes down to adoption and almost the patterns we have on the brain, in our brains, on how I do a task need interrupting. And it's funny, isn't it, how we need to, it really does feel like the big task of 2026 is to teach ourselves new methods of approaching work and our lives, with which always has the question in it, how would I start this with AI?
Exactly. Look, AI is absolutely not anymore a buzzword. People are using it, and it's here to stay. You could call it as an alien intelligence or artificial intelligence, as some people call it, true. But then, the sooner will we learn to adopt it, the sooner we learn to use it, the better it is for our daily life. Whether it's going to become a human-like intelligence is for the researchers to understand and find that out. But given the intelligence it has at the moment, uh, the important aspect is that we start using it to the best of our advantage in constructively.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm aware we're running out of time a little bit, but I wonder, just a question off topic, off the book a little bit, well, off the subject of the book. So this is your first book that you've written. How have you found it on a personal level? How's the journey of becoming an author been for you?
Well, I had always wanted to write a book, and the only thing which I can talk about is AI or digital. Now, I'm not expert in anything else. When I started thinking about which idea to develop in AI, I saw there are so many books available as a how-to tool or manuals of using different tools of AI, or working with AI. I didn't want to write another how-to manual. I wanted to connect it with what it means to be a human when you are seeing AI tools around you every day. And what is the role of a human? Why do we worry about that? What will happen to my job when AI will take up everything and all that thing? So the journey, when I started to develop this idea, I started to then go deeper onto the consciousness part of the human. And that is what makes us human. Yeah. And how can we use consciousness, the value proposition, the ethical part of the human, to use the AI in a constructive way rather than destructive way, or wasting time with it. So I started developing the idea. I started writing the book last Christmas. It took about 10 months for me to finish this book.
Wow.
I would have done it like multiple iterations. When you write on a paper and then you scrub it and throw it off, there's something like that. And then finally I landed up this concept and started developing it. It took me 10 months, and then here the book is. Hopefully it makes some sense to the audience who are reading it, and I would love to hear the feedback as well.
Well, fantastic. We'll put a link to the book in the podcast notes. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing all of those 10 months of hard work with us in the book and today.
Thank you so much for having me, Felix. It's good to let the audience know about the book, and I'm quite excited to hear the feedback.